Welcome everybody to Rosetta. My name is Savage and today we're going to be going over TradingView. We're going to be going over it as a beginner's video right from the beginning, from downloading it or setting it up and then going through the UI, some of the preferences, ways we can customize it, and some of the features that it has. For a free version that it does have, it really has so much packed into it compared to a lot of other platforms, and it really is great because it's cloud-based. All the work that you do saved on there is accessible regardless of which devices that you connect to it. Okay, so let's get into it now. And hopefully by the end of it, it might be a little bit less scary because it is quite daunting when we have never used it before and you pop into that menu. It can be a bit much. Okay, so let's get into it. So the first thing that we want to do is land up here on Google. We want to come down here and search for TradingView, which then takes us to these links, which takes us to the website. What can happen sometimes when you're on Chrome, a little box will pop up here and say, do you want to sign in with Google? We're going to do this in a second. You really do want to sign into this when you are looking at the charts, because if you do make changes and you are signed into an account, it doesn't have to be a Gmail account. It can be a various email accounts or even social media accounts. What it does is then it allows you to access these at a later date, and it'll save your drawings and any analysis that you've done on the charts. Before we jump into that, there are also other versions of this. So the free version is really great. They do have, however, the Pro version, Pro Plus, and Premium version, obviously with the prices respectively here. What these do is they just have some additional features within them. These are amounts of indicators, how many charts you can have in one layout, price alerts, and stuff like that. But the free one is good enough to start with. So always advise just trying it out first before you buy. Obviously, they do have trials as well for free for 30 days. So if you are interested in one, make sure that you try it out before you just purchase it and pay now. I don't know why you would ever want to do that, but you can try it out for 30 days. If you don't like it, cancel it. As well as that, in the description below, you will find an affiliate link for TradingView, which we would appreciate if you do use if you do sign up for one of these premium plans. Okay, so now what we're looking for here is this little icon up here that looks like a man. Click on this, say sign in, and then this will bring up a selection of ways we can sign in here: Instagram, Yahoo, Twitter, Apple, Facebook, Google. I'm just going to sign in with the Google. It'll bring up a little tab here that asks you to sign in. Just simply click on it, and then it'll ask you to choose a name here. So I'm going to be happy with that one. We're going to just say continue. Okay, so now that we signed in, this will take us into this hub here, which has got a variety of things on it. We can see a couple of overlays here where we can just cycle through the different stocks and things like that: crypto, forex, futures, bonds. What we want to do is come over here to super charts, and we press on that. And now what this is going to do is this is going to open up the individual charts for these different stocks and commodities. Now that we're within here, what we can see is this is the chart now. We can see here there's a couple of things. We're on a daily view here. Okay, so now we're going to look at customizing the chart. And what exactly can we customize? Well, there is a lot we can customize. If we right click on the background, what we can do is select the settings icon here with the gear, or alternatively, we have the gear icon up at the top right-hand corner here, which we can click on as well. Within this, we have a couple of options available to us in the symbol tab. What we have here is body, border, wick. This relates to the candles. If we do change the color of these, it changes the color of the candle. So we can fully customize these. They do not have to be the same. We can see here when I have this yellow candle on, the border is a different color and the wick is also a different color. So we can fully customize these and have, for instance, the body being yellow, the borders being blue, and the wick being green, for instance, if you wanted to. However, I just tend to keep it on the standard setting. Within here, there isn't really too much else to talk about. We can adjust some things here. For instance, this price line here. If we want to turn this off, we just tick this box and it disappears. As you can see here, now there is no more line across the chart where there was before. This is useful to keep on though, in my opinion. I tend to have it on just so that it is easier to see where the current price is, particularly when we are looking back in time. Okay, so we're going to go into the status line now. So within here, what we can do is adjust some of this information that is at the top here. We can turn the title on and off. We can have the open market status. So what this is with stocks in particular, if the market closes, it'll tell us whether it is open or closed. We have the open, high, low, close values. These are these values at the top end here. And basically what these do is if we hover over a candle, it'll tell us where that candle opened, what the high was, what the low was, and what it closed at. So this is quite useful to keep on. I tend to have this on, particularly if we're looking at two candles that are quite similar in height. If you want to know which one is the highest, this can be a useful thing to have on. What we also have here is volume. We can have the volume at the top here. I don't tend to have it up there. This area over here is where all our indicators would be listed if we actually have a couple of them selected. If you want to turn off the titles for these, you just tick this box and they disappear, as well as if you want them to show the value next to them, keep this ticked on. If you do not, you turn it off. Okay, now we're going to go into scales here. So scales allows us to change some of these label options within here. Symbol last price. So basically this would be this bigger red box area here. If we turn this on and off, basically it just tells us what the last price was that was traded. There are a couple of other things on here, but I tend to leave these off except for the ones that are already ticked. So what we have here as well is we have this countdown to bar close. So this red box area will tell us the last price as well as the time to the close. If we are on the 1 day, which is what we are now, so this is displaying that every bar on this chart is 1 day. And what we have is a countdown to the close of the day underneath here. This will change depending on what time frame we're looking at. If we're on an hourly, obviously it'll tell us what is the next close to the hourly time frame. What we can also change here is when we come and we're looking at the chart, we can see there's this little plus button, which can get in the way sometimes. If you don't use this method for putting alerts on, what you can do is you can turn this off. And what it allows you to do is just come right up to this bar without actually clicking anything you didn't mean to. But I tend to just leave it on here. Under appearance, now this is one that I do tend to mess around with a little bit. What we have here is the background color. So we can have this as a solid or a gradient. At the moment, it's just white. But for instance, if we wanted to change it to green or blue or whatever color we wanted, yellow, for instance, we can change this here. Now, within this, we can also change it so that it has a gradient. And then we can select two different colors for that gradient to go between. So this is quite nice. We can customize it quite a lot. It is quite an interesting feature. So depending on what your style is, I tend to actually just keep it like this with a black background just because I'm looking at it for long periods of time and I find it easier on the eye. I'm going to change it back to white now for the time being just to explain the grid lines. So now we can see here in the background we have these grid lines. So these grid lines are on the price and on a time frame. So whether that's a day, a month, depends what time frame we're in as to what those will be linked to. But basically, you will see we have these horizontal and these vertical lines going on here. If we want to get rid of them, that's easy as well. We come back to settings, come here to this grid lines, horizontal and vertical. We can just select none and they disappear. Or if we only want to have the vertical ones or the horizontal ones, depends on what we want. They are quite useful, so I tend to have them on. If you want to make them brighter or lighter, basically we change the opacity here. We just left click on this little box here and it'll bring up this slider that we can change that. We can also change the different colors if we want to have it in a different color, depending on what our background is. Potentially, we might not want it to be gray. I tend to leave it as is though, and then you can also add things like a watermark. So this watermark will just tell you what the chart is, what time frame it is. It'll give you the ticker, the time frame, and the full name of the chart that you are looking at. Now, I don't tend to mess around with any of this other stuff here. I just leave that as is. The trading tab is for if you are wanting to link a broker. I don't personally do this. I just use it for charting. And then I just place my trades on the actual exchanges that I use. And then what we have here is also this events tab. So the events tab is quite an interesting one. On the bottom here, you'll see a little circle. If we press it, it'll tell us news for the day. If there is a financial event that is happening today, there will also be another little circle here that you can press on and it'll bring up that information. What we can do here is we can toggle these on and off. Obviously, there isn't anything displayed here for the economic events, but we can turn off this news one just by toggling this here. So within this now, there is also ways to save as a template. So if you want to save all of the changes that you've just made here, and you want to have a couple of different templates, maybe different colors or different setups on this chart, basically you click on this template box here, you say save as, and then you name the template, and then you just save it as that. And I'm just going to call this TradingView. I'm going to save this. If we come here and we click on this, basically you can see here now we have TV as a template on the bottom. So that is pretty much everything for the chart settings on the setup there. One thing that you can do as well, if we click on this box here, is you can change this into dark mode. And this will bring up a little warning, and then it'll just change everything into dark mode here. So if we're looking at it in the dark, not so bright. So I'm going to just turn that back now. So as I mentioned before, obviously to tell what the market price is now, there are a couple of ways. We can either look at this red box here, which is telling us the current price that is being bid for this, as well as we do have these two buttons up here, which are the bid and ask respectively. So this is one way of looking at the current price. Obviously, we can look at the candle that is now playing out, and that'll tell us where the price action is. But for a detailed number, this is the best place to look for it. I tend to keep it turned on just because I do find it useful. I do, however, generally turn off the volume because it does make the chart busier. Okay, so now I'm sure you'll notice on the right hand side here we do have some watch lists. So what these are is basically we have some lists of some indices here. We can customize this quite a bit as well. So we're going to go over that next. So what we can see here is we have a list of indices here. Basically the SPX, MDX, DJI, VIX, and the DXY. So this will be a list that is sort of preloaded on here. So we can come down here and we'll see there's some stocks here, futures, Forex, crypto. And depending on what you want here, we can see that we do have a heading here and then a couple of these charts listed underneath it. If we do want to get rid of any of these, basically we just come here and we press this little X button here to get rid of them, and we can even get rid of these titles if we don't want them. Okay, so now if we want to add something to the watch list, what we do is we press on this little add symbol here. And what this does is this will bring us into this little drop down menu here. So what this has is obviously different subcategories here. We have this one, which is all, which will be them all together: stocks, funds, futures, forex, crypto, indices, bonds, economy. Depending on what we want, we can narrow down where the search is looking by ticking one of these boxes. If we go onto all here, basically when we search in this top box, click on it, type in what we want, BTC, then we can see that we have a couple of options within here. So if we wanted to narrow this down and say BTC USDT, what we could then do is that type that in there, and then it'll bring us all the different options. So we've got BTC USDT over here on the left, which is the ticker. We have Bitcoin versus USDT, which is the pairing. And then basically here we have the exchange that is on. So we can see Binance, KuCoin, OKX, BYBIT, CoinX, Coinbase, BitGet. So there is a couple of different exchanges that we can get this information from. So I'm actually going to come here and press this little button here, and this adds us to the watch list, as we can see now. So I'm just going to add a couple more now. I'm going to remove what we searched for, and I'm just going to come down here and add a couple of cryptos to this. So let's add Ethereum, let's add Solana, Dogecoin, ADA, XRP. So now we can see that we've got a populated list here now. And basically, if we do click onto these, what we will then see is we will toggle between these different charts. So this is a good way of keeping, just the ones that you want available on the side here, so you can quickly switch through them. So what we can also do here is we can add sections. So we right click on this area, press add section, and then this will add a little section here. So to rename it, we double click it, change it to, for instance, crypto, and then we've got a little section within this. So we can subdivide this again. Basically, you can have lots of little subheadings here between them, and you can adjust them. What we can also do is we can flag these up. So we can add a flag to different cryptos here, and basically we can add, a red flag here. We add a red flag here and a red flag here. If we press on the top area here, we can sort them by flag. And this will allow us to have these ones come to the top of the chart. So what you can do is you can set these up so that you have different flag colors. Obviously, in the free version, it only allows you one kind of flag color. So This is one of the drawbacks about the free version. If you have multiple different ones, you can use a different flag depending on what your position is, whether you're in a position, whether you're looking to take a position, for instance, active trades, stuff like that. Makes it easier to sort through them. If you enter a position, you just click the flag and then it's done. Okay, so basically we've done that. We've got the heading here. We can subdivide this again. You can add more sections within here if you want, and just hone this down. So we could have it into our ones and then our twos and then different categories that we can make up here to just organize it a little better. Within here, we can also clear the list. We can add sections, rename. There's a couple of things that we can do within this, customizing it. If you press on this watch list, what it does is it gives you a breakdown of the different exchanges, the different symbol types that you have within there, which exchanges you use, and then it'll give you a rundown of just some of the most important data that you have within there. So that's pretty much the watch list done. What we can do here as well is if you do click on one of these, what it'll do is it'll give you some information down below here, some key stats. So it'll give you the last price here. It'll give you percentage change for the day. It'll give you some news as well within this. It'll give you the performance over the last week, month, 3 months, 6 months, year to date, and 1 year. And then basically it'll give some technicals here in relation to buying, selling, strong sell, strong buy. So obviously these things are something which I wouldn't take just on their own. You'd obviously have to have a reason for buying, not just looking at something that tells you to buy, in my opinion. So what we can also do here is, unfortunately, once again, with the free version, you can only have one list, but you can have multiple watch lists if you do have either the Pro Plus, or the Premium plan. So this is one of the other advantages of it. If we wanted to, additional watch lists, you could have just a single watch list for crypto, a single watch list for stocks, whatever you wanted. Basically, that's how we would do it. Okay, so coming back here to the chart now, on the top left here, we have this S here. Basically, this will just bring down this little drop down menu here. If we want the desktop version, you press on this Get Desktop App and it will take you to another link in which you can download it. Then the process is pretty much the same as what we're going through here. They have a help center, what's new, dark mode, drawings panel. So this drawings panel basically just gets rid of these drawings on the side here. If you want to turn that on and off, that gets rid of that. Which you can change the language here. And then we have some keyboard shortcuts here, which is quite useful as well. If we come into here, basically you'll see that there's a couple of options within the chart. It'll give you a whole list of things that you can do here with keyboard shortcuts. And basically, it'll allow us to either place some indicators or some basic shapes like lines and things like that. That can be quite useful if you are not familiar with them. It might be useful to learn some of those. Over here, we have the symbol search. So this is giving us basically the ticker name and what we can do if we want to look for something else. We press up here and this will look to change the chart. So if we wanted to change from ETH and say we wanted to move over to BTC, USDT, let's go back here. Instead of just clicking on it here, you can just type this into this box area and it will give you this. Also, what we have here is a plus button. So this plus button, what this does is this compares the current symbol against another. So if we pressed SPX, for instance, what we would sketch here is basically, we can see here that the SPX plus 15.24. So BTC would be outperforming it in that instance by 15% pretty much. So if we want to get rid of this, we can see that it's now added this over here. We press this little X button, remove it, and it's gone. Also, what we have here is this time frames here. So if we want to change what time frame we're looking at, for instance, if we want to change this instead of the 1 day, we want to change it to the weekly. We've just changed that to the 1 week, and then it'll basically just give us a different time frame. Now, each of these candles in here will be 1 week now. So every candle is relative to whichever time frame we are looking at. One thing we can do, unfortunately can't do it on the free version, but if you want to add a custom time frame, you type it in right at the bottom here. And if you wanted to say, for instance, say you wanted 50 minutes per candle, type in 50, you select which time frame you want here, and then you press add, and basically it would add it to the list. Unfortunately, because this is the free version, it doesn't actually add it. So we will have to just leave that out. But what we can also do here, so this is quite a useful thing to do, and it's something that I tend to use. If we hover over this, we can see here it has a little star icon. If we press that and say add to favorites, what we can see now is that when we come back out here, from this little drop down menu here, we have these time frames that we can quite quickly switch between by just clicking on these areas here. So if you have a couple of time frames that you use regularly, basically this is the quickest way to switch between them. So that's quite a useful thing to do. So within here, we also have a series of different things we can select here, basically different candle types, bars, hollow candles, columns, lines, lines with markers, step lines, high low, Hikanashi, Renko, line breaks, Kagi. There's a couple of these. I don't really tend to change these too much. I just stick on either candles or hollow candles, sometimes on bars, but most of the times I just stick on the candles. So within this as well, now we've got indicators at the top here. Indicators, basically, there are a couple of different indicators that we can get through TradingView. And some of them are community scripts, some of them are trading views. For instance, if I type in moving average, where we have these, where it says technicals, and we can see that we have this list of these technicals here. These are all just from TradingView's library. If we do, however, move over here to the community strips, and I typed in MA, what we would then get is these ones here. So when we get some of these here, we can see that these have a name here. So the person which has published the scripts, as well as the amount of people who are using the script. This would allow us to, look for some custom scripts here if we want to add some indicators that perhaps TradingView doesn't have on its list. But basically, you just press on it, and then what will happen is you'll get this pop up here. I'm going to do a separate video on indicators, but it'll pop up here, and then you can either hide it by toggling this little I button on and off, or if you want to adjust it, press the settings button, and that'll bring us in here, and we can make adjustments to this. So that is how we get to these indicators. What we have at the top here as well is indicator templates. So if we want to create a template here, for instance, say we want to have a EMA, moving average, and then maybe volume, what we can do is we can create this, put all the indicators on here, click on this templates tab here, and then basically say save indicator template. And what this will do is it'll bring down a little template name here. You type in what you want, and we'll say TradingView, and then what you can do is you can also click these remember symbols, remember intervals. But if we just press on to save, next time we want to switch to that, just come here and click on the template for those indicators. This allows you to have a couple of different indicator templates so you don't have to manually switch between them. So if you want to use certain things together, this is the best way of doing it. It'll be easier to add. So now what this is, this other button up here is an alert. There's a couple of ways of doing this. What we're going to do is basically press on this button. This will tell us the condition. We have crossing. So if we want to say crossing up, crossing down, greater than, less than, entering channel, exiting channel, whichever one of these applies to the situation. In this case, crossing, most of the times it's going to be crossing because it's going to be something like a horizontal or a line that we're using. And then we can adjust the price. So if we want to know every time it crosses a certain price, we put this price in here, then this trigger area here where it says only once or every time. Now, what this is basically, this is whether it will trigger only the one time or whether it'll happen every time it crosses that line, for instance, but not more than once per minute. And then we can also add an expiry here, and we can name the alert what we can put on here. We can also have a custom message which we can change in here. So that's quite cool. The other way we go about adding an alert is either by pressing on this plus sign here, and we can say add alert at that price. Wherever our indicator is here, what it'll do is create alert at that price. The other way we can also do it is if we just put something like a line on here, we can also just right click here and say add alert at whichever price we right clicked at. So that'll also add an alert at that price. If we do that, it brings up the same menu, allows us to do the same thing here. We have some notification adjustments that you can make. You can get it to send you an email, notify you on the app, depending on what you want to have for that. So another feature that we have up the top here, but unfortunately it is a premium feature. Basically, if we press this replay button, what it allows us to do is actually play the bars forward from a certain point. When we when we press on this and we click it, basically it would cut the bars to the right hand side here and replay it bar by bar. We can adjust the speed and basically whether we want to play it manually or whether we want it to play at a constant speed and slowly play out. So this can be useful for certain things, but unfortunately this is only a premium feature once again. So now we're going to come over here and we're going to talk about these tabs on the left hand side here. So what we have at the top here is the cursors. So what this allows us to do is basically just change what cursor we have when we are looking at the chart like this. You can see we have a big arrow in this instance. If we have this, we just have a little dot, crosshairs as well, and basically an eraser for whatever reason. And then underneath this, what we have is the trend line tools. So this gives us a list of various different trend line tools here. We have, trend lines, arrows, rays, info lines, extended lines. There's a whole variety of things here. To be fair, out of these, the ones I use the most is the trend line, the horizontal line, the horizontal ray, parallel channel. Pretty much that is everything. I don't really use a lot of these other things within here, but they're all in here. And what we can do is, for instance, we could press on it, come to the chart, and then we left click and then left click again to place the line, for instance. So there are ways we can customize these, but basically I'm just going to keep this one simple. There are a lot of line tools here that we can use. And like I said, trend line, horizontal line and horizontal ray are some of my most used ones. So the difference between a horizontal line and a horizontal ray, just for clarity, is that the ray will only go as far as where you click. So we can see here when I place the horizontal line, it drew it all the way across the chart, and this will be visible forever. If we just want to mark something just in our local price action area, the horizontal ray is often the better option in my opinion. Okay, so moving on down here, what we have is some Gann and Fibonacci tools. So these are useful tools that we can use for our analysis. We will do some separate videos on how to use some of these, but pretty much any kind of Gann analysis or Fibonacci analysis, you will have a tool for it within here. So these are very useful. We use these quite regularly, particularly the fib retracement and trend-based fib extension. Underneath this, we have geometric shapes. So this allows us to use everything from a highlighter and a brush all the way down to creating rectangles, circles, and various different shapes within here. These can be quite useful if you are trying to convey something through your chart. Also, here we have some text annotations within here. We can have callouts, price labels, arrow markers, some other arrows within here, and a flag mark. So these are quite useful, once again, if you are trying to convey something through your chart. Next, underneath this, we have the Patterns tab. So this has got a variety of patterns from cipher patterns at the top end here, all the way down to Elliott wave patterns in the lower area here. We use these a lot. We will be doing some separate videos on Elliott wave theory, so make sure that you stay tuned for those. As well as that, underneath here, we have the prediction and measurements tools. We have the long short position tools here, which are quite useful. We can use these to work out risk reward of trades that we are interested in taking before we actually take them. So we can see what exactly our risk to reward ratio would be. And this will do this automatically depending on where you drag this to. As well as that, within here, we have date ranges. This is quite simple. You just click on here, drag it across. It'll tell you how many bars and how many days it's taken. Also will tell you the volume here. Another thing we can do here is looking at a price range. So this is quite useful if you are going to be, measuring up a couple of prices within the chart and you want to see how much this move was in relation to this one and compare percentage gains within it, for instance, and have this on the chart at the same time. So now another way that we can do this for measuring is we can also use the date and price range tool, which is something like this. So this will give us a date and price range of the area that is highlighted. So another way we can do this is by just pressing the shift key, and this will do the same thing. If we press and hold the shift key, it will automatically do that when we click on the chart screen. So this is quite useful if you want to measure something quickly. As well as that, what we can find in here is fixed volume range profiles. These are very useful. We'll have to do a separate video covering these, but basically that's where you would find that. Underneath this, we have some icons, so we can add all sorts of emojis to our chart if we wanted to. Sometimes these are useful, sometimes not so much. Underneath this, we also have the measure tool here, which basically, like I said, shift and click. We can press this and do the same thing. When we click again, it leaves it on the chart. And if we want to get rid of it, just press Ctrl Z and everything will disappear like it was before. Okay, so underneath this, what we have is the zoom in. So there's a couple of ways we can do this zooming in. We can either press on this zoom in area and then drag it over the zone we want to zoom into, and then it will zoom into that area. The other way we can do it is just by scrolling with the mouse wheel. If we scroll just on the chart here, it will just move us along the x-axis. If we hold it on this one, it'll bring us in on this axis. So if we scroll on the mouse wheel over this location, it'll zoom us in on this axis. If we do it on this one, it'll do it on that one. What we can do is we can have this toggle auto scale on here. So now this what this does is this will change the scale as we just scroll back here. So to move, what we do is we just press on the chart anywhere and drag across to actually move across the price range. So that is how we actually navigate through that. I don't tend to have this on only because sometimes it can be quite disorientating when it automatically snaps out, but it's all down to personal preference. What can be useful though, sometimes, for instance, if we're really zoomed in on this one little move here, if we press this auto and just move it out a bit, it's easier than having to do it manually over both the axes. So that's the same thing. If we press zoom out button, it takes us all the way out again. So now what we have here is a magnet icon. So what this does is this turns on a magnet. So we can have a weak magnet or a strong magnet. If we have a strong magnet on, what happens is you can see here, as I'm dragging over the top of this move, it is automatically snapping to the top of it. And if I click, it just takes it to the top of that candle. I don't have to try and manually do it there. And then I can just come over this one and do it like that. Strong magnet, what happens with this is if I click on this again, you can see it doesn't matter how far away I am from it, it just automatically snaps to the nearest highest point, for instance. Doesn't matter if I'm anywhere near it, which can be useful, but it can also be very annoying. So I tend to have this off. Now, a cool little trick is, for instance, say I have this line tool, I want to turn the magnet on. You can see that it flashed on and off there. If I press the control key, what it does is it turns that magnet on. I click, now it's off. So I can put this anywhere I want. If I press and hold it again, it'll automatically snap back again. So it's an easier way of doing it without having to click this on and off. Another useful thing that is down here is this stay in drawing mode. So this is particularly useful if we're going to be, doing a couple of things within the charts. For instance, I'm going to come here and select the horizontal ray, for instance, and I want to come here and I want to mark out a couple of locations that I think would be interesting levels for price action. So I'm going to just come here and just click on a couple of these areas, potentially this high here as well. So now we can see that I'm not having to come back and click this line every time. It's actually staying in drawing mode. So the way you actually get it out of drawing mode, if you left click, it'll get rid of that and it'll stop placing lines. If you do, however, continue to click while this is on, it can become quite frustrating and you might get yourself in a bit of a tiz. But it is quite useful for this if you're doing a lot of marking up within the chart. So that is one thing that is good to have on here. I tend to have it off. Otherwise, you've got to basically press and click, come back up here, press and click, come back up here, press and click, and it's not as quick as just keeping in drawing mode. If you've got a lot to do, it's potentially the way forward. And then what we have here is lower down, we have this lock all drawing tools. So what this will do is basically now, once I've turned that on, I can't actually, drag and move this drawing anymore. And this is useful if you're going to be panning, through a chart and you don't actually want to touch anything. You just want to explain what you are showing and you don't want to actually touch anything. If you turn this on, it just stops you from accidentally, because we have to drag across, we have to click and drag. If I click and drag in the wrong place, I might move this line. So that's quite useful to have. And now also another useful tool here is if you want to get rid of all the drawings you've got on the chart for a second, if you just press this button, it gets rid of them from the chart. We can also press over here and it will bring up these options: hide drawings, hide indicators, hide positions and orders, or hide all. So we can click on a single one of these and get rid of those if we want. Over here, we have the trash can. We can say remove one drawing, remove one indicator, remove one drawing or indicator. If we want to remove all the drawings from the chart, we can also right click and we say remove drawings or remove indicators. So this is how we can clear that chart up. Obviously, once you do this, they will be gone. But if you accidentally do something, you can always come back up to the top here and press this undo button or this redo button if you want to put it back to how it was. That is the sidebar here done. Now all that is left is the bottom area here. So what these are is basically we have open screener. It'll be screening some of the stocks here. So you can set this up and you can, you can search for certain ones. I don't tend to use this very much. We have a Pine editor here, which allows us to create our own indicators within TradingView. It can be useful, but you need to know how to use it. There is a strategy tester here. We'll have to do a bit more on this, but basically you load your strategy up here and you can back test it. Here we also have a trading panel. So this is if we want to link up to an exchange. I don't do this myself, but what you can do is you can actually link up to an exchange. There is also a paper trading area here, which you can connect to through TradingView, which is quite useful and is quite interesting to have a little bit of a play around with. In the spirit of the fact that we have quite a long video here, I'm not going to go through that within this video. Okay, so the last thing that we have to go through is all of these on the right hand side. We have this at the top here saying unnamed. So what we can do here is we can save the different layouts as well. So if we want to have a couple of layouts, we just press on this. Obviously, once again, this is a premium feature, but what you can do is you can have many different layouts which you will have different charts within them. So for instance, if you want to mark up certain charts, use the same chart but have different charts marked up. This is how you would do it. You'd come into this layout and create a new layout, and then you would mark it up in that new layout, and it'd be separate to the one that you've marked out in this layout. As well as that, up here we have a quick search, which is basically just to search for any functions and settings or drawings. Up here we also have full screen mode, which we can access as well by pressing Shift and F. This takes us into full screen mode, gets rid of that noise down the bottom. So if we want to really hone in on something, that is a way of doing it. We have a camera button up here, which takes a snapshot. We can download the image, copy the link. So this will give us a URL, which can be quite useful. If you are entering things in a trading journal, for instance, this allows you to put a URL in there instead of actually having the whole picture, which can be useful in that because it saves a bit of space and makes it look a bit better. We can also link this directly to Twitter and tweet an image, and we can open this in a new tab as well by pressing this button. So over here, what we have is the watch list, details, and news. Basically, clicking on this, we've gone over the watch list already. Under this, we have active alerts. So if we add an alert here, what it will do is this will now pop up in here, and we can see all our active alerts. And there will also be an alerts log here. So we can stop them, we can clone them, we can do a couple of things within this tab. As well as this, now we've got the data window. So this will give us a little bit of information on this. It'll tell us, the open, the high, the low, the close, the change. Underneath this, we have hot lists. So this will be basically just hot lists from US exchanges. Depends on what you click on here. You can obviously change this to wherever you are looking at, and then it will change that hot list. Underneath this, we have the economic calendar. So this will give us a couple of things that are coming up within the recent days, and it'll also give us some other details here for the earnings calendar towards the bottom end here. So these are quite useful. Sometimes when we have volatility on days, it's quite good to have a look in here and see what is going on. My idea. So what you can do here, you can create an idea, which is basically just publishing a post that you have here. You can type in what you want. You can give a link to the related idea as a URL, which can be to your chart. Okay, so underneath here, what we have is mine. So this will just be basically where you can share and post some ideas, and these will pitch up in here and other people can see them. As well as that, underneath here, we have chats. So this will open up, public chats as well as private chats, which you can set up. So you can actually chat with other TradingView users. If you have their username, you can add them and then you can privately chat with them here. As well as that, there are some public chats here which you can have a look at. Underneath that, you will see ideas stream. You have no notifications within here. This is obviously where all your ideas will come in when they are posted, so you can maintain an eye on them. Underneath this, you will have streams. So this is basically for where traders can stream from TradingView. So this is quite an interesting feature here. I haven't really messed around with it too much, but it is quite a cool little feature that they have added. So underneath here, you have notifications. This is where we will see new followers, mentions and ideas, mentions in the chat area, things like that. So, this is where that'll all pitch up. And then underneath here, what we have is the object tree. So this is quite a useful one here. We're going to actually do a separate video on this, but every drawing that we place in here basically comes onto this object tree. And what we can do is use this object tree to delete things, or we can group them, hide them, things like that. We can turn these all off by clicking on these I button here. So now all of them are invisible. Can turn them back on. As well as that, what we can do is, we can come here, select all of them, and then create a group that these all come into. When we turn them off, they all disappear. When we turn them on, they all come back. So this is quite a useful little tool. Underneath this, we have the help center. Obviously, if we press on this, it's going to give us a whole bunch of things that we can find help with. You can type in here and it'll also show you your support tickets at the top here. Okay, so I think we've pretty much covered everything there. What I'm going to do now is just say thank you for watching. If you have enjoyed the content, please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Turn on those bell notifications so you never miss a video, and leave us some feedback down below. We are really interested to hear from you. Let me know what you thought of the video, if there was anything I could have done better, or if there's anything that I didn't include that you have an interest in seeing, and I'll do a separate video of that. Really appreciate the fact that you've taken the time to watch it, and wishing you all the best. We'll see you in the next one. Take care, everybody.